Welcome everyone. We're going to wait another minute or so and then we'll get started. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to InnoCrowd's Manage and Audit Your Payroll with Workday Reports and Dashboards webinar. We're excited that you're able to join us today. If you're not familiar with InnoCrowd, we're a full-service boutique Workday partner. Our team holds over 1,000 Workday certifications, and we offer initial deployment, Phase X, and post-production support for HCM, financials, adaptive planning, integrations, and more. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit those via the Q&A feature, and we'll take time to answer them at the end. With that, I'll pass it over to Jen to get us started.
Thank you, Taryn. Hopefully everyone can see the screen. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jennifer Solway. I am a Senior Director and Senior Account Architect at InnoCrowd, as well as I'm a Workday Payroll Product Lead. I've been in the ecosystem over 8 years, actually closing in close to 9. And prior to Workday, I did HCM and payroll consulting on another ERP system. With Workday, my main focus has been on payroll and global payroll, although over the years, I've done HCM as well. And most of my experience is in payroll implementations, post-payroll support, process optimization, and also quite a bit in the business process outsourcing. And I have worked on the client side as well as a system integrator. So I understand some of the challenges that our clients have with their overall process. I've seen many different types of controls, and that's the information I'm going to be bringing into this presentation. So our agenda, we're going to look at some key considerations when you audit your payroll. My top recommendations, everyone will have different controls and audits that they're required to do, but these are some of the ones I most commonly see. I'll look at standard Workday reports as well as the dashboards. Workday's worked hard to release new functionality, especially in the area of retro. So we'll also be doing a demo of some of those reports if you're not familiar with them, and you may choose to start incorporating those into your overall payroll process. It wouldn't be a Workday presentation without a safe harbor statement. I do want to let you know that during the demo, when I do the Pay Cycle Command Center, some of the reports are custom reports, but I will talk a little bit about some of that functionality and being able to bring in your own reports. So some key considerations when auditing your payroll. Some of our clients have audit controls or SOX controls that they have to execute with every payroll. And when you're doing those, some of them may be pretty manual. So when we go to the demo, you may want to look at some of these new reports that may make executing on those controls a little bit easier. Things to also think about, do you have a documented checklist? Is it something that you review on a regular basis? I highly recommend annually, or after every Workday release, as there may be new functionality to help you with your process, and you want to look at that to make your process more efficient. And then, are you leveraging Workday delivered tools and reports? There's some really good custom reports you can build, like matrix reports, but there's also some great standard reports. So that's something to consider. And then how long is it taking to process your payroll? There may be opportunities to optimize your payroll. In general, payroll should probably take 1.5 to 2 days to process. Now, obviously, if you have a lot more pay groups, the number of employees, the time you take will increase. But one thing we're going to take a look at, what can you do before you process your payroll to help decrease the time you're actually taking during your payroll? And some of the top audit recommendations I would like to make, and maybe you have these already incorporated into your process, maybe not, but it's the business process transactions and progress report. It's a great report. Some of our clients will put it on HR or their managers to make sure that processes are complete by a certain deadline or payroll cutoff. However, from the payroll perspective, there's certain transactions that may cause overpayments, such as terminations or leave of absence. And so I like to recommend our payroll team run that report if they have access, because if it creates a overpayment, that's just more work for the payroll team after the fact. So anything you can do to be proactive, I highly recommend. So that's a great tool. That's a standard report provided by Workday. You may not have access to all the features, so you might have to work around the security for that. Also looking at new hires. Do they have date of birth, social security number, tax elections, payment elections? We know with payment elections, if you're using a third party, there's a cost to printing checks. So you can send reminders to employees or ask HR to follow up. And then with date of birth and social security, some of our clients are auditing that during payroll. There's no reason you can't run that report a week ahead, a few days ahead. So again, helping to optimize your payroll process and doing some of that work up front. And as mentioned with the business process transactions in progress, looking at those terminations, making sure that if they have a PTO payout, that's already been calculated. It's either coming through payroll input or through absence, or if they're in California, maybe you've already paid a termination. But just making sure some of those things are done before you get to your actual payroll process. Then while you're running your payroll, looking at audits like supported and unsupported retro. One of the retro reports I'm going to show you makes it a little easier to see, especially the unsupported retro. So if you run retro prior to payroll, you can actually do some of those audits ahead of time. But if not, these reports will help you do that audit during your payroll process. Looking at payroll inputs not processed. Just because you put a payroll input in doesn't mean it actually flows through payroll. There could be many reasons why it's not flowing through, but there's a report that you can run. And then comparing your current payroll to your prior results. During the demo, I'll show you the report. I'm also comparing gross to net. Some things that make naturally cause those increases are new hires or terminations or decreases, but also certain deductions, for example, should be pretty stable from period to period, like medical, dental, anything that doesn't calculate off a percentage, like 401k, that will fluctuate based off of overtime and other payroll inputs or bonuses and things coming through payroll. So that variable pay, you need to consider. But also when you're looking at that, you may want to set up tolerance levels. So for overtime, maybe it's okay that fluctuates period to period by up to 30 or 40%. It'll be different for every organization. And for other organizations, you might have a lower tolerance. Maybe overtime has to be pre-approved and you don't want to see a fluctuation higher than 10%. And setting those tolerances, you may be able to find where someone maybe fat fingered something. They put in a wrong amount. And so that will help you during your payroll process. And then after payroll, looking at payroll totals, your payroll register versus settlement, looking at that by company. But if you have a third-party vendor processing payments, taxes, garnishments, it's maybe balancing against all three, your payroll, what's going through settlement, and then what's at your third-party site. You log in there and just make sure everything totals. So those are just my top recommendations and things that I most often see with the clients I've worked with. Now, standard reports, again, this list keeps growing. So I do recommend that with each Workday release that you look at reports that have been added. So these are just some of the standard reports, like all deductions, all earnings. You're not going to look at that every payroll, but there may be the view payroll input by worker that you are looking at before every payroll. During our demo, we're going to take a look at these, what we call faceted reports. And if you've never heard that term during the demo, you'll become familiar with what a faceted report is. And some of the new retro reports. They've really helped to understand what is going through retro. And then we'll also be looking at the pay cycle command center. And there's some post-payroll reports listed here. So again, if you're not using these, I recommend that you take a look at these reports and how you might be able to fit it into your current process. And then tax reports. We have some clients that will balance taxes every pay period. And I'll tell you that those clients have an easier time at quarter end and year end. But some clients don't do that, and that's okay. That's their process. Again, my recommendation to do it every pay period. And so these are some great reports to help you balance. There are standard dashboards. And for this presentation, the demo, I'm going to be focusing on the pay cycle command center. There's a new settlement dashboard, pay compliance, global library, payroll year end. Now, when you go to look at these dashboards, you can add them as apps. And if you can't find them, it may be because the security is not enabled for your role, or within the payroll domain, they haven't been enabled. So they don't necessarily come turned on. So again, if you can't access them, work with your security administrator to get those turned on. But I find these are some essential tools, and I'll talk about some of these again when we get to the demo. So I am now going to jump over to Workday. And the first thing that we're going to look at is the pay calculation processing report. This is what's called a faceted report. You have the search criteria on the left-hand side. So maybe you want to just look at employees in one of these companies. And so if I select them, then I only have 10 results. If I select Green Planet, I'll only have 2. And there's other types of selection criteria. So I recommend that you play around with it. You can look at gross, net. If I had 0 net, I could select them, maybe research why they have 0 net. Maybe they didn't get their time tracking in, or some other issue. Maybe they had arrears. And it's just a great report. The other thing is that these are actionable reports, meaning I can select my employees, and then I have options. I can recalculate them. If I put results on hold, I can unhold the results. I can cancel them. If they were not completed yet, I could select all my employees in this pay group, and right from here, complete the results. I don't have to go out and run pay complete. I can do it right here. So it's a very powerful report. It can help streamline it depending on where you are in your payroll process. The next report is based off of, it's for retro. So it's a retro calculation processing report. The other report you run by pay group pay period, but you can select multiple pay groups, multiple pay periods. With this retro calculation processing report, it's based off of the retro processing date. So I can see my selection criteria here. You can select on the selection and you can change your selection. So for here, I can see that I have some results that were processed on January 22nd, but have not been completed. So you have to select the individual dates, and I'll give you that in the selection criteria. So I have to go in and select what I want to look at. So it's not by pay period, it's by the date that the retro was run. Okay, so it's a big difference between these two reports. And it's also a faceted report, and I can look at it by, here's my retro by payroll input. Oh, I have some retro hires. I can go take a look at that and do further analysis. So let's say I want to look at some of these people that have a lot more money coming through retro. I may want to check that someone didn't fat finger a date so that it's coming in as retro versus the current pay period. And when I select these, I can select those people and look at the retro results. I can view the payroll results. I can also complete the retro if any of them have not been completed yet. I can suspend or cancel right from this report. I don't need to go out and enter a different transaction. So it's actually a really nice feature of these reports. But maybe you want to see it more in a traditional spreadsheet. Maybe your controls say that you have to download a report of all the retro coming through that pay period. So there's a retro pay calc result audit detail report. There's also a summary report. And these reports are a little bit older than the processing reports. And it will break it down by pay component and amount. And you may not be using the Workday worksheets feature. I'm going to actually show it to you because I think it's a great tool for payroll. Because today, what I see a lot of our clients do is they download reports and they're emailing them internally back and forth. But we know we want to protect sensitive data or PII data. So emailing is not the most secure. So what you can do is use worksheets, and it can be a collaborative way to share information. So you might be used to this button with the X, which you can export to Excel. But if you want to use worksheets, you'd use this button. If you do not see this button, it may mean either you don't have security to worksheets or it's not been enabled in your tenants. You would have to sign the Workday Innovation Agreement or enable it, and there's some security behind it. With these worksheets, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. It might take a minute to pull it up. But with worksheets, it does use your security within Workday. So if you share the report with someone that can't see the data, they're not going to be able to see data that they're not already allowed to see. My system's a little slow because this is a GMS tenant, but you can see it looks exactly like Excel. You can do some calculations on it. And what I like is I can go and I can share this. So it's really easy. So I'm going to pick someone at InterCrowd. I can select and share it. They would then get a notification that they have a report to be shared with. And so let's say you have a report that has hundreds of lines. I can say validation, and someone may start at the top. Someone else might work from the bottom up, or you may assign, okay, you work on the first 50, you work on the next 50, whatever you're trying to do. And you'll see it updated live. If you use Google Docs or any of those tools, it's very similar. You can add comments, they would see the comments. And then you can always get back to the reports by going to your profile and going to your drive. And you can see, oh, I shared this with with other people. I can pull up who it's shared with, and you can get back to the report. So again, you're not emailing, and it's a great tool for collaboration. I think it's perfect for payroll. I was so excited when I saw this. The next thing we're going to look at is the Pay Cycle Command Center. Now, this has been around for a while. I would say clients that have been live longer than 5 years may not have this. If they do, they might have a very early version configured. If you've been live over 3 years, you probably have this, but you may only have one tab set up. And it's probably what I'm showing now is this in progress tab. What Workday has been doing is to expand the functionality of this dashboard. And so now you can have tabs that go across, you can customize it, you can add reports, custom reports as worklets, so they show up here. You can have, put your custom reports here so they're a link, so things that you usually run. So early on, people would take their payroll checklist items and put the lists along the right side here. But you can also create a separate tab with all your checklist items with links that go and will trigger those reports or those tasks. What's nice about this is it's while you're processing payroll, you can see how many people you're processing, and you get right to your compare without having to launch another report. And so, as I mentioned before, you may want to decide on tolerance levels. You may already have them. But let's say holiday pay. This one, when you have, let's say, the 4th of July, everyone's going to have the holiday pay on the 4th of July. I don't need to necessarily investigate that because I know it's going to be 100% change unless you had 2 weeks with back-to-back holidays. But usually that is not, you want to make sure everyone's getting holiday pay. So if you had the 4th of July, you saw 0 holiday pay, that might be a separate issue. But again, this gives you the change, so you know what you need to dig into. If I see this gym membership, if it's blue and I click into it, it will pop out a report and say, yep, I know what this is, I'm okay with it. And so you can do some of your audits right from here. And then you have your deductions, and I'll have everything from your employee to employer taxes, your medical, dental, your health and welfare, your 401k. Now, 401k, since it's based off of a percentage of pay, that may fluctuate. So having an established tolerance level, then you know when you need to dig in a little further. But some, like dental, I wouldn't expect this to change unless you had new hires, job changes where someone maybe went part-time to full-time, and now they are benefits eligible, or you had terminations. So these should be pretty steady. So if you see a big fluctuation, that's what you'd want to audit. Also on here, you have period trending with gross to net. So if you had a big bonus payout, you would probably see a spike in the pay period you're processing that bonus. It also, you can put retro differences, and again, just high level. Yeah, I know we process a lot of bonuses. We put it in as retro. And at this point, it might be like, why did these come through as retro? They really should be current period. You have the opportunity to go and fix the dates on those. Your reconciliations tie to your payments on what's going through your settlement, and then accounting summary. I always recommend that you look for anything going to a suspense account. Some suspense accounts will error out. Some may have just a generic one that's actually set up on the accounting side. But by looking at for suspense, you're saving your accounting people time so that they don't have to reclass it after the fact if it does flow through. And if you're aware that there are new earnings or deductions that have not been mapped, that's often the culprit of why you'd have something go into suspense. So this is really powerful for helping you process your payroll. You can create a tab for pre-payroll audits and look high level. This is not secured by pay group, but it's more a macro level. I can see all my workers on leave, my terminations, my new hires. I can look at what state they're in. So if I had a new hire in New York, I might want to make sure that their local taxes are set up. If I had a termination in California, I'd probably just double check that they've been paid out since they're due pay on their last day. You have post-payroll audits. Again, you can put your reports in here as worklets. You can have all the reports on the right side. And so I can just click on there and it would launch the earnings register. You have pay compliance. So I'm just going to do I can quickly see changes that are delivered by state. Other usually means a locality. I can click on this and I say, oh, Hawaii. What are the changes that happen in Hawaii? And it'll give you the date that it came through, the source. So in this case, it's probably the state of Hawaii website, but I can click on it. It will launch to wherever the source is. And it gives a description of what the change is. And this is a really nice tool because if this is impacting your employees and it's an employee tax, you may want to do some change management. So when they see it on their paycheck, they're not surprised. And this is just more information on the different compliance things coming through. You can set up an administration setup. So this may be just quickly gives you your supported. You can add unsupported retro report here. And again, just some links that are commonly used. And then this is just an example of the payroll checklist that if you have an Excel, you can recreate it here with the links. So as you work through it, you don't have to remember what's that task that I need to launch. And then you also have the opportunity for announcements with the global library and payroll compliance updates. I love the global library. It will tell you all the tax rates, the date it changed, your garnishment rules, anything that's coming through that's provided by Workday in the configuration, you can look it up. So I realize we're almost out of time. So we might have time for like one question, but if you have added a question, we will respond via email so that everything is addressed. I want to make sure that we get to everyone. So put them in the Q&A and we'll be collecting those. And Taryn, I don't know if you want to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Like Jen said, we'll keep the webinar open for another minute or two. So feel free to put any of the questions you may have in the Q&A, and Jen will answer those for you and we'll send those out in follow-up. But thanks everyone for attending today. If you have any specific questions or would like to learn more about this topic, you can also reach out to your ACC or leave your email in the survey at the conclusion of the webinar, and we'll be sure to reach out. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.